Panther-Lair Post-Game here on a Saturday night. Started around 10:30, about 7 hours after kickoff, about 2 hours after the end of the game. And what are you going to do? It's a loss. Pitt suffers its first loss of the season. It comes in the second game of the schedule, 34-27 to Tennessee in overtime. And when I sat down and I was, getting ready to start, I'm like, okay, I want to start with a big statement. You know what I mean? Like, not even say like, welcome to the show or anything. Just like, well, something, this and this and this. I wanted to hit you with a big monologue, and I'm sure I'll probably talk for a little bit here, but it just comes down to Pitt lost. Pitt was playing a game as a ranked opponent against a ranked opponent from a Power 5 conference, team, talented players, speed and skill and all that stuff. They're playing a good team with an experienced quarterback, some talented skill players, and pretty fast defense, pretty aggressive defense, and a ranked team. A team that rightfully, I think, belongs in the top 25. Next week, they'll be in the top 20, at least, if not climbing up into the top 15, depending on how things shake out. They were a good team. And Pitt was facing a good team, and I think Pitt is a good team. And when you have two good teams facing off, obviously, we're going to get very basic and rudimentary here. One team's going to win and one team's going to lose. And the team that wins more often than not is the team that capitalizes on opportunity. And the team that loses more often than not is the team that fails to capitalize on opportunity. And sometimes you only need one part of that equation. You might just need one team to fail to capitalize on opportunity a little bit more than the other team fails to capitalize on opportunity. And in Pitt's case, and it's funny because we talked about opportunity so much in this week leading up to this game, of what opportunity there was of what kind of opportunity this game presented for Pitt in the big picture, in the grand scheme of things. We talked about opportunity so much. And here we are after the game. We're going to talk into the top 15 or top 12 or top 10. But the game itself was just a series of missed opportunities for Pitt. Tennessee didn't necessarily outplay Pitt by a significant margin. Tennessee didn't necessarily look like decidedly the better team, although there were certainly points where you would say, well, Pitt is not the best team on the field right now. But I could count, more often than that, more often than saying Pitt's not the best team on the field right now, there were plenty more times where I said, that's a missed opportunity. And the reality is, when you play a game against another ranked opponent, you play against another Power 5 conference opponent, you play against a good team like Tennessee, you can't afford to blow, at the very least, 4 major opportunities. And really the number could extend out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 9 or 10. Significant opportunities that either took points off the board, cost you an opportunity to score points, or directly led to Tennessee scoring points. You can't have that many missed opportunities and still escape with a win. Kind of did that against West Virginia. Kind of did it against West Virginia. Escaped with a win despite not playing their best game. I thought overall, despite the outcome, Pitt played better this week than they did against West Virginia. I thought, we'll get into the weeds on this more, but overall, I thought particularly in the first half when Kedon Slovis was out there, I thought it was a better offensive game plan than we saw against West Virginia. I thought it was an offensive game plan that looked more like the second half of the West Virginia game than what we saw in the first half of the West Virginia game. And after that West Virginia game and in the week since then, I praised Frank Cignetti for the adjustments he made at halftime, of how he went to more shotgun for Kedon Slovis and how Slovis seemed to do better in that setting. And they came out here, and I think, Kedon Slovis obviously only played the first half. I think he had one snap under center in the first half. One snap. And so they were playing to his strengths. He was in empty shotgun looks a lot. He was, sending guys in motion out of shotgun a lot. They were running the ball out of the shotgun. Kedon Slovis was dropping back to pass out of the shotgun. Now, one fatal flaw in all of that, and one fatal flaw when we talk about game plans and play calling and this and that, is that, if I was I don't want to say withholding judgment, but if I was refraining from passing judgment on the offensive line until we saw a little bit more than just 1 week, well, we've seen 2 weeks now, and they're getting blown up. It's not working up front. And I'll step to the front on this and say I spent all offseason talking about all these 6-year seniors and 5th-year seniors and how they had all this experience and these veteran players. And I compared it to 2009 and 2016 as these other successful seasons that had experienced veteran offensive linemen. And boy, that's the common thread, and that's going to be a big part of this year. And that's why that's going to help Keaton Slovis, and that's going to help the running backs, as they try and transition away from Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison to this new offensive personnel at some of those spots. It's going to be, if not okay, is going to be helped by the fact that they've got this veteran experienced offensive line. Well, they haven't played well. And that's probably putting it kindly. There was a word Pat Narduzzi used on Monday 3 times to describe his team and his coaching. And you could probably apply it to the offensive line. I don't think Dave Borbley would disagree. He said as much when we talked to him on Tuesday. They're not playing up to the standard. And, I mean, let's stay away from silly Tomlinisms. They're playing like crap. 4 sacks today. Nick Patty and Keaton Slovis sacked twice each. Both guys had 4 rushing attempts. So the 2 sacks plus 2 more scrambles. And countless number of times they had chased out of the pocket. Countless number of times they were hit. They both end up hurt coming out of this game. Keaton Slovis has to leave the game at the end of the first half. Nick Patty is limping around for the better part of the fourth quarter in overtime. Can barely walk. Because they're getting no help. They're getting no protection. And it was a problem against West Virginia. And we talked about, well, that's a really good West Virginia defensive line. Didn't really know where they were coming from. And they got some talent. And I'm sure we'll say the same thing about Tennessee. But guess what? They're getting blown up. Way more than this offensive line get blown up. And that's a major problem. And I think, as kind of bouncing around from topic to topic here, but sort of building up that idea that, hey, this offensive line has been average or worse through 2 games. It's something that kind of occurred to me as I was driving away from the game. And I think it was a combination of factors. It was watching Pitt's game against Tennessee tonight. It was seeing a couple of highlights that I think Pitt fans probably didn't want to see on Twitter from some other games maybe taking place on the West Coast tonight. But this team, at least on offense, personnel-wise, is a lot closer to average than they were last season. And some of that, and that's not meant as a slight on these players. I think there are good players on this offense. I talked a lot this offseason about the players on this offense, and I think there is talent on this offense. And I don't think we needed reminders about Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. But there have been plays in each of these 2 games where I watch and I say, Kenny Pickett makes a play in that situation. Kenny Pickett escapes in that situation. Kenny Pickett makes a better throw in that situation. Kenny Pickett makes a better read in that situation. And there have absolutely been times in the first 2 games where I've looked at it and said, Jordan Addison makes that catch. Jordan Addison gets open and makes a catch there. Jordan Addison doesn't drop the ball on 2nd and 7 when they're at the 12 and threatening to score a touchdown. He doesn't drop a ball in the back of the end zone that ends up going for an interception. And that's a big difference with this team. And I don't think anyone underestimated what the losses of Jordan Addison and Kenny Pickett were going to mean for this year. I think most people realized it was going to be tough to replace them. And if at any point, my stuff over the summer through training camp led you to believe that I thought Keaton Slovis would just step right in for Kenny Pickett or that Konate Mumfield would just step right in for Jordan Addison, I apologize for misleading you. That wasn't what I thought. I thought those guys would be good, and I think they've both shown flashes of being good, obviously with some holes in their games. There's no question about it. But they're not Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that because some of these situations, some of these missed opportunities that we're talking about are simply about guys not making a play. There are 4 major missed opportunities in this game for Pitt. 4 different instances where they could have avoided this game going to overtime. They could have gotten out of it playing with their backup quarterback hobbling around on one leg and escaped with a 3 or 4 or 7 point win. 4 different occasions. You only needed 1 changed outcome on those 4 different occasions. They're driving on the first drive. They get to the Tennessee 12. It's 2nd and 7. Slovis puts it in Mumfield's hands. It's there. It's in his hands, running like a slant or something like that. And it's not a touchdown, but it gets at least 7 yards. He's at the 5 when the ball bounces out of his hands. So he's at least getting a first down, and maybe getting another yard or two. It's first and goal from the 3 or the 4 or the 5. As opposed to being 3rd and 7 from the 12, Keaton Slovis has to scramble and basically throw it out of the back of the end zone. And they have to settle for a field goal. That's 4 points. 4 points lost right there because the guy doesn't catch a ball that hits him in the hands. Third drive of the game. And I mean, you know all these plays, but let's add this up. Okay? Third drive of the game, Pitt's at the 21, 3rd and 10. Keaton Slovis scrambles out to his right, throws to Bub Means in the back of the end zone. Means can't pull in the pass, and it's intercepted. It was a touchdown catch. It should have been a touchdown. Bub Means should have caught that pass for a touchdown. At the very least, it's incomplete, and they bring out Ben Sauls to kick a field goal. So you maybe have another 3 points there. I'm going to say you really should have had another 7. So you got 4 lost points from the Mumfield drop on the first drive, and now 7 more on this tipped interception. The ball goes over to Tennessee, and Tennessee incidentally scores on the ensuing possession. Pitt should have scored there and made it 17-0. Instead, they lose those 7 points, and Tennessee gets the ball and goes down and scores. That's 11 points you've left on the field. And then you add in not 1, but 2 missed field goals. 17 points you left on the field. And we're not, and that's not even getting into, if you know, what would be another one? I actually could add a couple more, but there was a drop on 3rd and 14, and it could have, that drive might have kept going, and who knows what they might have done. Not even going that far down that road. Just saying, 2 dropped passes at or near the end zone, in or near the end zone, and 2 missed field goals. 17 points. Any one of those plays goes the other way. 1 field goal, one of those 2 misses goes through the uprights. And this game doesn't go to overtime and Pitt wins. 30-27. Just one of those field goals. If Bub Means, if that doesn't get intercepted, it's either a touchdown or a field goal. And again, you're winning the game. You're not going to overtime. And then, that doesn't even get into the sort of the little things that happen. The play before the end of the half. They're at the 37. There's 22 seconds left and they don't have a timeout. Why are you trying to pass? What do you really think you're going to accomplish? In 21 seconds. You're going to get downfield, get into field goal range. So to get into field goal range, you'd have to go 13 to the 50 plus another 15. You have to get to the 35. We want to call that field goal range? 52? No, not even to the 35. You have to get to the 32. So you need like a 31-yard play. You need to gain at least 31 yards, or let's call it 30. Let's call it an even 30 yards. Say you're trying to get to the 33. All right, which still sets up as a 51-yard field goal, and I'm not sure you're really going to trust Ben Sauls. I don't know if you're going to assume he makes that, but let's say you have confidence that your kicker is going to make that 51-yard kick. You need to get 30 yards in 21 seconds without any timeouts. So you need to find a way to stop the clock so you can bring your field goal unit on the field. That doesn't make any sense. But you try it. You drop back, and Keaton Slovis gets sacked, and he fumbles the ball. Tennessee recovers and kicks a field goal. So that at halftime, instead of the score being 21-17 with Tennessee leading, the score is now 24-17. You're down by a touchdown, and your quarterback's out for the rest of the game. Why? Because you thought in 21 seconds you could go 30 yards and somehow stop the clock and get your field goal unit on the field. After a loss, there's a lot of stuff to tear apart. I don't have too much of a problem with most of the coaching, except that. That's a big play. Now, that's not the only play that matters. That is a 3-point swing. That's 3 points you gave Tennessee because you chose to try that. It's not the only one that matters, though. There's still 2 missed field goals. There's still a dropped touchdown that goes for an interception. And there's still a dropped, play at 2nd and 7 that, potentially could have set you on course for a touchdown. You have to settle for a field goal instead because of a drop pass. It's missed opportunities. And Pitt was in a game where, as a good team, they're facing another good team, but they failed to capitalize on opportunities. Now, Tennessee probably is kicking themselves for the second half. They scored 3 points in the second half. After 24 in the first half, they basically get shut out in the second half. And major credit to Pitt's defense for that second half. Major credit to Pitt's defense. Major credit to Pitt's special teams, with the exception of Izzy Abanikanda trying to bring the ball out. Not a good call. But big ups to Pitt's defense in the second half. Big ups to Pitt's special teams for making some big plays in the second half. Tennessee probably feels like they had opportunities they could have capitalized on that would have avoided the game going to overtime as well. But I think Pitt probably had more. And the second half, drive after drive, the first drive of the second half, they miss a field goal. Second drive of the second half, they have a drop on 3rd and 14 that ends up leading to a punt. Third drive of the second half, they have a missed field goal again. Fourth drive of the second half, this is when Nick Patty runs for what should be a touchdown, and it ends up coming back on a holding call on Jared Wayne. It was a pretty questionable call. I don't know if you really buy that. I don't really buy that call. It didn't look. The guy that Jared Wayne was supposedly holding was the defender who made first contact with Nick Patty. Now, either that guy is an amazing football player if he can get held and still be the guy who makes the tackle, or Jared Wayne didn't really hold him. There's a lot of holding in that game on both sides, and most of it didn't get called. Why that one chose to get called, it's kind of weird. But that's the way it goes. And Panaruzzi said after the game, it's a game of inches. And there were a lot of inches out there that Pitt left on the field. You know what I mean? That there were a lot of inches that they could have had, and they didn't. And that's MJ Devonshire with an interception in the end zone, but just barely stepping out. And that ends up leading to, that actually was right after the Keaton Slovis fumble, because it led to the field goal right before the half that made it 24-17. Jared Wayne in overtime. He's got a catch. He's got a 20-yard catch to convert 2nd and 13 and put the ball at the 8. Just barely has his toes on the white. And it's a game of inches. And that's how close it was. Even the blocked punt. The P.J. O'Brien blocked punt. Panaruzzi said it. A lot of people pointed it out. He probably had an opportunity to run in for a touchdown, but Solomon DeShields bumped him and he fell out of bounds. And they ended up getting nothing out of it. Missed opportunities, inches. And it's the kind of thing you can't afford to do when you're playing most teams, but certainly a ranked SEC opponent or a ranked Power 5 opponent. And yet, for all of this, and I'm going to get to the comments and questions in a second because I know everybody's been really patient and waiting. I appreciate that. For everything that I've been saying here, I couldn't help but come out of the game feeling I don't even, you don't say you felt good. It was a loss. You didn't say I felt optimistic. It was a loss and your starting quarterback got hurt and you don't know how long he's going to be out. But the effort, the way the players played, how hard they battled back, Izzy Abanikanda and Gavin Bartholomew and Jared Wayne, I thought all made huge plays in this game on the offense. The defense, I just felt like it was a good group effort, particularly to rebound after the first half, where you got the feeling that Tennessee was just going to keep rolling. And they didn't. Like I said, they were effectively shut out in the second half. And guys were getting banged up. Some were reminiscent of the kind of injuries that teams tend to have against Josh Heupel's teams. Some were legitimate. Devin Danielson got hurt on the second play of a drive and did not return to the game. I think that was a real injury. And I'm not going to question anybody's injuries, this or that. Servasi Dennis looked like he got hurt. Haba Baldonado had to come off at one point, although I think he wanted to stay on, but the refs sent him off because he had slowed down the pace of play and then didn't return for the rest of that drive. They were getting banged up. They were getting knocked around, and the quarterbacks in particular. There's a picture of Nick Patty on the screen right now. He was getting knocked around. Keaton Slovis was getting knocked around. And I think there was probably a point in the first half, I know for me and probably for you as well, that you just thought to yourself, this can't keep up. If he keeps doing this, if he keeps getting hit like this, he's going to get hurt and he's going to leave the game. Well, that's what happened. But these guys kept battling, and I give them credit for that. I give them credit for being tough. I give them credit for fighting. I give them credit for sticking it out. And you know, I think there are a lot of angles you could look at this game and say, Pitt has no chance. You know, losing the starting quarterback, not having the leading rusher from last week, and just some of the missed opportunities like we talk about. And they still end up pushing this game into overtime and really having a chance in overtime. You know, the second down play in overtime, the one second down, has gotten a lot of criticism because Nick Patty was under center despite the fact that he could barely walk. And I guess it makes sense. You would want to put the guy in the shotgun if you are unsure if he's going to be able to backpedal all that well. But really, he ran play action and had Izzy Abanikanda wide open. I mean, it was a touchdown play. It was really well designed. It was well called, but Patty didn't look that way. He looked to his left, and Abanikanda was on his right. It happens. You have these kinds of games, and particularly against good teams. You have these kinds of games where you miss opportunities, where things don't go your way, and it can be, at a certain point, it becomes tough to overcome. And to have this many things go against them and still push it into overtime again against a good team, I mean, I give them credit for that. I give them props for that. Now, a big part of what happens to Pitt going forward, and I'm going to get to the comments and questions in a second, but a big part of what happens to Pitt going forward is going to rely on, it's going to hinge on Kedon Slovis and his availability and when he can come back. I don't know. I don't know the status there. You know, there's different rumors floating around. There's rumors that he might be out for quite a while. There's rumors that maybe it's not that serious and he could be back sooner rather than later. Obviously, Pitt's chances improve if it's the latter as opposed to the former. They're a better team with Kedon Slovis on the field. I think we saw that tonight, and that's not to take anything away from Nick Patty. He had his moments, and even just running. I mean, when he would move in the pocket, you could see he moves better. He is faster. He's more athletic. The touchdown pass to Jared Wayne, I have to give all the credit to Wayne because it was an incredible catch, but Patty made the throw. You know, Patty made the throw, and he made a couple nice throws. But the offense is still better with Slovis. I mean, Slovis is the better quarterback, and he's the better passer, and the sooner he gets back, the better. Now, can they go to Western Michigan and win with Nick Patty? Probably. Can they beat Rhode Island with Nick Patty? Probably. Yes, they can. They can beat Rhode Island with Nick Patty. Can they start winning ACC games with Nick Patty? I think you'd rather have Kedon Slovis. Jim Hammett, who writes for us, made a great point. He put it brilliantly. He said, look, they can win games with Nick Patty. I mean, they can probably win the ACC with Kedon Slovis. And I think that's the distinction to make between those two guys. You know, I think one's a better option than the other. You know what I mean? And I think that's why the coaches picked Kedon Slovis. Sorry, it's Saturday night. Gotta have a beer while we do the show. All right, let's get to the live chat, the live comments and questions, and see here. Joe New is a super chatter. We appreciate him. He says our offensive line is terrible 75% of the time. All the accolades mean nothing. All the returning starters crap means nothing. All that matters is execution. Yeah, and results. Look, I mean, the offensive line hasn't played well, and I think they'd be the first ones to tell you that they have struggled. I think they want to be able to run the ball better. I think they want to be able to pass protect better, and they haven't done either one of those very well at all. And I think they would absolutely agree to that. And I don't think. I mean, yeah, I think it just comes down to that. They're not playing very well. And it's showing in the offense. It's making it more and more difficult to move the ball down the field. Now, it's entirely possible they have faced two very good defensive fronts. And maybe the sledding will get a little bit easier over the next couple weeks. You know, Western Michigan, Rhode Island, Georgia Tech. Maybe they'll have an easier go of it with these teams when they, when maybe it'll lighten up a little bit. But that's kind of, that's not the point. They need to play better. And for their age, for their experience, they need to be better. Because they haven't been very good so far. TRR says, do you expect changes along the offensive line and with Bub Means? Too many options along the line to keep going with the same 5 guys. Means' drop in the end zone turned a 17-0 game into a 10-7 contest. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think Jaden Bradley got a lot of snaps. I don't think they threw him the ball, but they should have. I think Bradley got a lot of snaps, probably snaps that would have gone to Means otherwise. I don't think Means and Bradley were on the field at the same time at all. And so, I think you saw a little bit of that, although Means probably still out-snapped Bradley. And along the offensive line, I mean, Branson Taylor played a decent amount at right tackle, took a series or 2 at left tackle as well. So they're mixing him in there. I think Blake Zabovic might have gotten some time at right guard. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Owen Drexel. Drexel had to leave the game with an injury. Terrence Moore came in. That was late in the game. Was that in overtime, maybe? When did I write that down? 60 was... Oh, it was on the final drive of the fourth quarter. The touchdown drive of the fourth quarter. He got hurt on 1st and goal from the 6. And then Moore came in. And obviously, Pitt scored a touchdown on the 4th and goal. So we'll see what happens there, but that might be another change that happens. I think getting Gabe Hoy back could help as well. Hoy being injured over the last, obviously missing the first 2 games, not playing at all. He warms up a little bit and then doesn't play. That would help too. It's another experienced player who I think played pretty well last season. So they could definitely stand to get Gabe Hoy back in the lineup as well. David Allen says, what you do is tell the OC that the scheme play calling is poor. It's not 1968. So I don't really know what you mean by it's not 1968. I'm guessing it means, you're just banging your head against the wall. You're just running all the time. Tonight they called 82 offensive plays. Officially ran 83 plays. One of them was a kneel down. So 82 offensive plays. 52 of them were pass plays. Did you hear that? 52. So that's 24 pass attempts for Slovis, 20 pass attempts for Patty, and then 4 rushing attempts each. So 24 plus 20 is 44, plus 4 plus 4 is 52. So out of 82 offensive snaps, offensive plays, 52 were passes, and 30 were runs. I don't want to hear that they're just banging their head against the wall, running all the time. Yeah, do they run a lot on first down? They do. There's no question about it. Do those runs usually gain a lot? No, they don't. Okay? Unless it was the first play of the second drive when, Izzy Abanikanda ran 76 yards for a touchdown. That one tended to go pretty far. But overall, I think they're still developing the running game. I think they still need to figure out what they want to do in the running game. I think getting Rodney Hammond back would be a boost to that. When that's going to happen, I think it's going to be a while, if at all, this season. And so they're going to rely on Abanikanda, who did have 154 yards and a touchdown on 25 carries, plus a 21-yard reception. So, I think they've got the backs to do it, to run the ball. And I think, they had the right idea coming into this game as far as possessing the ball and keeping Tennessee's offense on the sidelines. They ran some longer possessions to open the game. And I apologize if we're buffering here. I think I might have had a moment of buffering. I hope you can still hear me here, but I apologize that we're having an issue. I don't think the problem is the scheme. I mean, I think there are plenty of other things we can look at. I think they made a lot of adjustments in the scheme. From the first half to the second half of the West Virginia game and then carrying over into this game. I think when you end up on your backup quarterback and he's only got one leg, one functioning leg, I think that gets tricky as well. But I'm not really gonna dump on Frank Cignetti just yet. I don't think that was the biggest issue. I think there are other things they have to fix and other problems they had tonight. Matt Coley says, am I the only one utterly disappointed in Konate Mumfield so far? You're not the only one. 13 targets tonight, only 4 catches for 34 yards, excuse me. He had the drop, which I talked about. He had a couple other plays. I think he had 2 other plays. One was in the end zone, and another one was a catchable ball that would have been tough. I think it was on a 3rd down. They wouldn't have been easy catches. They wouldn't have They're not run-of-the-mill pedestrian catches. They were higher degree of difficulty catches. But if you want to be the number one wide receiver, if you want to be the number one receiver for a team, then you need to make those catches. And those were some of the plays where I was thinking to myself, I know a guy who would have caught those balls. I know a guy who would have made those catches. And that was an easy trap to fall into, I think, to think about that a little bit. But yeah, Mumfield has to get better. Bub Means has to get better. Jared Wayne was awesome tonight. 7 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. I thought he played a great game. Gavin Bartholomew obviously made some big plays. He had the leap over the defender, 52-yard or 57-yard reception on that play for a touchdown. Jalen Barden, I don't know. I don't know. 2 catches for 14 yards. This guy has more he can give. Jaden Bradley, not even targeted tonight. He has more he can give to this passing game. And if Bub Means is not getting it done, if Bub Means is not making the catches, Jaden Bradley needs to get more targets. I think I'm not really ready to give up on Mumfield yet. I still think he should get the ball and get targeted a lot. But I think Jalen Barden should see some targets. I think Jalen Barden should see more than 2 targets in a game. In a game where Mumfield has 13 targets and only catches 4, I think you could do better than 2 targets and 2 receptions for Barden. Because I think he's a better player than that. I think he's fast, and I think he's explosive, and I think he can make things happen. It's a work. I think it's I was going to say a work in progress, but it's more about development and growth and progression. I think for those players individually, those receivers, and they've got some room to grow. Nadir Abdul Ella says, I agree play calling is boring and predictable. Offensive line is not as good as we thought, and now it's injured. I mean, the predictable thing, all right, if they line up on first down and you say, watch, they're going to hand it off to Izzy. I mean, you're probably going to be right. They do run it a lot on first down. They do run it a lot out of certain formations, although I think they mixed it up a little bit tonight. You didn't see as much of that 6-0 line thing with Ryan Jacoby playing as an extra tight end. They ran 2 snaps with the 7-0 line. So, I mean, that's not really even something that counts. Like 2 snaps out of 82 offensive plays. That doesn't register very much with me. I don't know. The play calling's boring and predictable. I mean, 2 drop passes away from 2 more touchdowns, right? Effectively. You could have had 2 more touchdowns with those drop passes. And, so that's an extra 14 points on top of they finished with 27, take the field goal off instead, get a touchdown instead of a field goal. They'll get 38 points. They scored 31 last week, really with 1/2 of effective offense. I think there are specific things they need to do better. I think there are specific positions where players need to play better and execute better. I think there are specific things that need to improve here for the coaches and the players. But to just summarily say, this coach stinks, I can't get on board with that. I think it's more nuanced than that. I think there are more details that need to be addressed. TRR says play Barden and Bradley more over Bub Means. I mean, I think those guys. Bradley played quite a bit. He was on the field a lot, but he wasn't targeted. Barden, I don't think, played all that much and saw, like I said, 2 targets and caught 2 passes. He needs to get more involved. And Bradley, I won't argue with that either. Patrick Schultz says, seriously, there's only one issue right now. How's QB1? We don't know anything for certain. I think even as we sit here now, I'm getting like text messages and emails saying either it's really serious and he's going to be out a long time or maybe the whole season. And then there are some saying it's actually not that bad. It's not a serious injury. He'll be back relatively soon. And so, I don't know. I don't know how long Slovis is going to be out. You'd like to think you'll get him back. You obviously want him back as soon as you can get him. You'd like to think that you could go to Kalamazoo and beat Western Michigan and come home and beat Rhode Island with Nick Patty. And maybe that's the ideal scenario. If you can go up there and win with Patty and then come back here and win with Patty and then have Slovis ready for the start of October and ACC play against Georgia Tech, that might be your ideal scenario. Some of that might depend on his health and when he's ready to go. Let's see. Scrolling down, Reed Worth says, yes, there were things to clean up, offensive line, D-line, wide receivers, kicking game, but everything is still in front of us. If you told me in summer that Slovis goes down at halftime and we still go to overtime, I'd say you're crazy. We need to see Gabe Hoyen, ASAP, Scarton and field goal, PAT, and more Bradley instead of Means. The defensive line, it's interesting because they're not generating the consistent pressure I thought they would, and obviously that you would need from them. But they still, in the last two games, really, have had the ability at key times to make some big plays. I think they had some big plays on West Virginia near the end of the game. I think they had some big plays in the second half against Tennessee here. They need to be more consistent. They need to put up better numbers. I mean, they had one sack from the defensive line tonight. I think that's what it was. Let me check. No, they had two. David Green had one and Kalijah Cansey had one sack. They had one each. Green had one and Cansey had one. Brandon George had the other. A huge sack, by the way. Big time play by Brandon George in his season debut. I think the defensive line needs to be more productive. They need to play more consistent and be more impactful, forcing turnovers, tipping balls, fumbles, that kind of thing. But overall, I think those guys have played pretty well, but still have room to improve. I think they can be even better than they've been. Let's see. David Masenda says, what other realistic options are there for place kicker? 2 field goals wouldn't result in overtime, very likely. Yeah, I think even you make one of those field goals and you're not going to overtime, the option is Sam Scarton, who was the place kicker last year. They had a competition in training camp this year. It was Scarton versus Sauls. Sauls won the competition. Made his kick last week. Missed 2 out of 4 this week. Made 2 this week. I think 2, right? Yeah, made 2 out of 4 this week. Made from 30 and 35. Missed from 46 and 36. And one of those, I think the 35-yard, was tipped and still managed to get in. So, Pat Narduzzi said after the game that competition sort of continues all week. Those guys are always battling with each other. Scarton and Sauls are. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see if Scarton's the better kicker during the week. And if he is, then he'll get the work when they go to Western Michigan. Walker Dubiel says, I can't wait until Pitt comes to Kalamazoo against my old college Western Michigan and gets clapped again like last year. I don't think that's going to happen this year, Walker. I don't think Western Michigan's as good as they were a year ago, and I think Pitt has a better idea of how to defend them this year. So I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out in a week, right? I welcome you back to the live stream that we do after that game. Will Z says Kenny made the offensive line. Maybe. I mean, it helped. I think it helped when you have a guy who can move like he can. But Kenny. So here's the thing. I mean, we talk a lot about that. We talked about Kenny being more mobile than Slovis, and Kenny Pickett being able to run, and that kept the offensive line's sack numbers better. And even though they were still giving up pressure, Kenny was so mobile that he could make plays, and that's true. But at the same time, there were a whole lot of times last year where Kenny Pickett dropped back and basically just stood there flat-footed and was under no pressure at all, and then made his pass and picked defenses apart. And so I'm not Kenny Pickett obviously did a lot to make the offensive line look good, but at the same time they protected him pretty well, better than he's going to get protection this year, I think. Pitman Zach 94 says, for a vaunted SEC team, Tennessee wasn't really all that. Pitt literally killed themselves, and Tennessee barely beat them in overtime. Yeah, I think that's a credit to Pitt. I do think Tennessee's a good team. I think Hendon Hooker missed some wide open shots. It felt like Joe Milton in the first half last year. But I think Tennessee is a good team. I think Pitt is a good team also. And I think, a game like that where you might come out and say, boy, they look like they're pretty average. Or as Todd Blackledge said when he didn't know his mic was hot, they were very pedestrian. the reality is I think they just took a pretty good SEC team to overtime while playing without their number one quarterback. And that's a testament to the talent on the roster. I think it's a testament to the depth they have, that I think they are a pretty good team. They just missed on too many opportunities that maybe if they were at full strength, they capitalize more. I don't know. David Masenda said, I had a great feeling for the outcome once Gavin Bartholomew scored because it was a return of a tight end to the offense finally in several seasons. The tight ends were a big part of the offense last year. Lucas Krull and Gavin Bartholomew had a big season last year. So the tight end has been part of the offense. But, yeah, that Gavin Bartholomew play was pretty great, leaping over a defensive back. ZC717 says it took Tennessee overtime to beat Pitt without their starter and a backup quarterback on one leg. Pitt more so lost the game than Tennessee won the game. The bottom line is we were so used to one quarterback for the last 4 years. Well, he is gone, so we will all have to adjust with what we have. Yeah, and you know what else? It's been a while since we're going to have to adapt to watching this team win in different ways. The offense isn't going to look like it did the last few years when everyone complained about how the offense looked. It's a different offensive approach, and it's not necessarily one that's antiquated or old. It's a more balanced approach, and I don't think there's anything antiquated about balance. I think teams try to run the ball. And that's common. Did you watch the Texas-Alabama game? Talent aside, and obviously those teams are more talented, but they're establishing the run. Jahmyr Gibbs was running the ball. Robinson from Texas running the ball. These are, really good running backs and really good teams that are relying on trying to establish the run and have some balance. I don't think there's anything antiquated or old fashioned or Stone Age about that Neanderthal offense. It's not, it's about establishing some balance. And again, they end up throwing the ball or attempting to throw 52 times out of 82 snaps. That's actually not a balanced offense. That's not a run-heavy offense. That's 60% pass as opposed to, 30 runs. Ryan Falcone says, how much of the pressure was due to the running backs not getting it done? 2 sacks were because of running backs missing blocks while the line was doing their jobs. I didn't notice it that closely, Ryan. I can't sit here and say that this sack was on Izzy or that sack was on Carter Warren or where it came from. That's stuff you kind of look at a little bit later and see who is sort of the culprit. I do think there were times where the running backs missed their blocks, but at the same time, I think the offensive line is the bigger problem. David Allen doesn't like that I'm talking about Pitt's missed opportunities. He says, how can you play this game when Tennessee had a blocked punt and a muffed punt and another fumble in the second half? Well, I guess I would look at, they like I said, I think Tennessee probably missed some opportunities as well. But at the same time, Pitt's missed opportunities, 2 missed field goals, a dropped touchdown that turns into an interception, and a dropped pass that would have made it a 1st and goal at the 5 or the 4 or maybe even the 3. Those are opportunities that directly affected the score and changed the score of the game and took points away from Pitt or led to points for Tennessee or caused Pitt to have fewer points than they would have otherwise. And so in a game that goes to overtime, any missed field goal is a killer, and let alone having 2. In a game that goes to overtime, an interception that results from a should-have-been touchdown is huge. These plays are very significant, I think, when you look at it, and more sort of acutely than you had a turnover, what a big mistake. Jay Bish says offensive line was absolutely putrid. It also doesn't help that Keaton Slovis is absolutely oblivious to pressure. I'm not sure if he's oblivious to pressure. There are times where I don't think he picks it up well. But I also think he's trying to hang in there and make the throw. Even like the Gavin Bartholomew play. I was watching clips of that before we sat down here to do this show. And even on the Gavin Bartholomew play, if you watch like the left corner of the screen, Slovis takes a shot at the end of that play after he makes the throw to Bartholomew. So, and I see it's buffering again. I hope you can still hear me. he got knocked around a lot, but I think he's trying to hang in there to make those plays. He's trying to hang in to make passes. Roger Poorman says Kenny Pickett's mobility made the offensive line look much better than they are. Tennessee's quarterback could have eaten his lunch in the pocket, seldom rushed. Well, I don't think that's true. I mean, I think they got after Hooker. I mean, they sacked him 3 times. He ended up running the ball 15 times. Some of those were design runs, but some of them were scrambled. So, I mean, I think they got after Hendon Hooker a decent amount. Let me see what they officially credited for quarterback hurries. They only gave Pitt 1 quarterback hurry officially. Brandon George had it. But we'll check. Like Pro Football Focus, I think records pressures a little bit better than the official stat keepers do. I think the stat keepers are either more demanding of what constitutes a quarterback hurry. But Pro Football Focus tracks pressures, and we'll get the numbers on that. But I mean, they had pressure on Hooker. I mean, he was dealing, like I say, he was sacked 3 times, and he ran the ball 15 times. Some of those were designed runs. Some also were not, And so I think he was under some pressure. I think Pitt got after him a decent amount. Hey, speaking about Hendon Hooker running, you talk about the run defense. Jalen Wright had 9 carries for 47 yards. 5.2 yards per carry, which is not good. But Jabari Small, their starting running back, had 10 for 17 and 2 touchdowns, but 10 carries for 17 yards, pretty good. Total, Tennessee had a net gain of 91 rushing yards. They gained a total of 111 yards. But once you take out 20 lost yards, they end up with 91 net rushing yards. So back to where it's supposed to be after giving up close to 200 to West Virginia last season. Let's see. Will says our passing plays are slow developing. That has to account for some of this. Tennessee dialed up some nice blitzes that we just didn't pick up pre-snap. Yeah, I don't know if the passing plays are slow developing or not. Will, I'll take your word on that if that's how you've observed it. But I think that work in progress, those growing pains are continuing. And now we'll see how long Keaton Slovis is out before he gets a chance to kind of work on it more in games. Will said another comment from Will says the 4th down sack was a clear example of a bad pre-snap read. Gavin Bartholomew saw the blitz and ran a hot route. Keaton Slovis didn't even look his way and got sacked. Yeah, that was the 4th and 3, I think from the 27, where they opted to go for it as opposed to kicking a field goal. And I mean, yeah, it was pretty clear. The blitzer that got to Keaton Slovis came, was unblocked because Gavin Bartholomew went out on a route. And if you could throw it to the guy who is in the place where the blitzer vacated, then you have a good chance. But Keaton Slovis didn't pick that up and didn't read it, or else he would have had a first down. I mean, he would have gotten more than 3 yards on a throw to Gavin Bartholomew right there. Garrett Sherwin says if Keaton Slovis plays the second half, Pitt wins, but on to Western Michigan, and hopefully the offensive line improves and Rodney Hammond plays. I think... I think they win if Keaton Slovis plays. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I think they win. I would mostly agree about that. I'm not 100% because he had a rough first half. 14 of 24 for $195, a touchdown and a pick. And he was sacked twice. He ran 2 other times. He was knocked around quite a bit. I don't know if... I'm pretty sure they win if Slovis continues to play. I can't guarantee it. On to Western Michigan. Hopefully, Garrett says, hopefully the offensive line improves and Rodney Hammond plays. I'm not counting on Rodney Hammond playing for a while. And the offensive line, you would like to think they will look better at least against a MAC opponent, but we'll find out. Brian Wintermeyer and Will both say that they thought Jared Wayne was holding on the Nick Patty touchdown run. So those guys disagree with me, but it's I thought it was dicey. I mean, I saw guys tackle Kalijah Cansey, and it didn't get called. So I guess there are always holds going on every play. It just depends on what gets called. Let's see. Scrolling through the comments here. Oh yeah, the Battle play too. Rashad Battle, a touchdown pass, and they ruled that Rashad Battle pushed the receiver out of bounds before he came back in. I mean, that was a dicey one too. Questionable call, but yeah, overall, and a few people have said this. I mean, I think the officiating crew was okay. There are a lot of reviews because that's just what happens, but I didn't think they were missing anything too egregious. I thought there was a hands to the face penalty or a face mask penalty that got picked up, and I thought that should have stood at least as a hands to the face. Even if you didn't want to call it a face mask because he didn't have a full grasp of, I think it was Vincent Davis. I forget which back it was. I think he still could have called at least hands to the face. Morven Carrier says, I think it's fine to do that. Sometimes we saw it work sparingly. The biggest issue is way too predictable. Oh, talking about the heavy formations, having Ryan Jacoby in and all that. He says they ran it always on first and second down and in these heavy formations. If they mix things up with play action to trick the defense from time to time, I think it could work. Yeah, I think they need to, if they're going to have Ryan Jacoby on the field, they need to throw a little more, even though you're limiting the number of options you have by bringing him out there. Speaking of options, Carter Johnson was in the game more. He had a big block on, I think Izzy Abanikanda had like a 25-yard run, and Carter Johnson had a big block to spring that play. But yeah, if you put Jacoby out there, you do need to do more than just run out of it. You know what I mean? Play action. And I think they've mixed in play action well going out of some of their other personnel groupings. And I think it's worked. I think they've gotten some of the things they wanted on play action plays, but they probably do need to mix it in more when they go with extra offensive linemen. Will Z says Pitt had plenty of chances to win in the second half. The defense played their hearts out, but missed field goals with bad passes behind receivers was too much. Yeah, it just didn't work. I mean, it was missed field goals, and like you say, I mean some of the passes were off the mark. I mean they just weren't. The offense wasn't flowing with Nick Patty in there. Will says, I'm going to just try and, we only got a few minutes here, so I'm just going to try and bang through a lot of these comments. Will says the heavy formations have to go. We aren't bullying Power 5 teams with those formations, especially not with how inconsistent our wide receivers have been overall. Great for play action passes, though. Yeah, I agree. Garrett Sherwin says, would they ever give Nate Yarnell a shot? I think I remember Pat Narduzzi talking him up before the Peach Bowl. I'm not sure. I don't know if Narduzzi ever said who would be the third quarterback. Obviously it's Slovis and then Nick Patty, but he never really said who would be number 3. So when Nick Patty got hurt, I think on a sack, where was it? He got hurt. Well, he had that play where he was trying to run for a touchdown in the first play of the fourth quarter, got called back on a holding. He missed the pass to Konate Mumfield. And then on 3rd and goal from the 11, he got sacked for a 6-yard loss and got hurt on that play. And I started wondering who would come in. Would it be Nate Yarnell or Derek Kyler? And we never found out. But I don't know. I don't know who the number 3 quarterback is. I mean, Narduzzi said that competition was ongoing in training camp, that nobody had really stepped forward and grabbed the job. And so I don't know where it stands right now. They might have had to go to that, somebody. If Patty couldn't come back in, Tennessee had a pretty long drive, gave him time to recover, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know who the third quarterback is. Let's see here. Reedworth says, should Pitt have gone for 2 after the Wayne touchdown in the fourth quarter? So I wondered this myself. You score there, it's 27-26. Just a couple minutes left in the game, 2:23 or something like that. And I wondered myself if they should go for 2. Try and get the win. Don't go to overtime. Don't try to, don't take your chances with trying to beat them in overtime. Ultimately, it was probably the smart decision to kick the extra point. Pat Narduzzi said they thought about it, but decided to play for overtime, kick the extra point, and trust their defense to get a stop, and then go to overtime and see what happens. But I thought about the going for 2 as well. But it was probably the smart decision. It's interesting that Tennessee's ensuing drive, they get to a 3rd and 5. They're stopped at 3rd and 5 from the 43. Servassier Dennis gets hurt, so there's a break there. And they don't call timeout. Pitt had one more timeout. They opted not to use it when the clock started running again. And so Tennessee just lined up to punt, ran the clock all the way down, punted, and Pitt took caught the punt and then took a knee, and that was the end of regulation. I was a little surprised they didn't at least maybe try there, but it was probably not worth taking the risk. Let's see. ZC717 says Frank Cignetti has a different philosophy than Mark Whipple. People have to realize that. Pitt was more pass first with Whipple, but it's more of a balanced attack with Cignetti. It was like that when he was here about a decade ago. Yeah, I think so too. I think it was, he goes on to say, Cignetti is the least of Pitt's problems. Offensive line is the biggest problem right now, not the play calling. I agree. I think that's, I tend to agree with you, for now. And maybe in a couple of weeks we'll feel different. Maybe we'll say, no, this offense is, crap, and, it's trash play calls and trash play design, but I don't think that's the case. I think they're trying to have a more balanced offense, and this is what it looks like, trying to segue into that sort of approach after having something pretty significantly different for a long, long time. Joe New is a super chatter, and and we should have mentioned this off the bat. He says, rest in peace, Frank Cignetti Sr., and, absolutely echo those sentiments. Heart goes out to the Cignetti family, certainly Frank Cignetti Jr. I don't think anyone would have faulted him if he did not coach in this game. It's a huge, we have him on the screen, or had him on the screen a minute ago. I think it's admirable that he did coach in this game. I don't think anyone would have faulted him if he didn't coach in this game. It was, that's got to be tremendously hard. I was a little surprised that he did coach in this game. I don't know how you could focus, but I guess his father was ill, Frank Cignetti Sr., and I think maybe there was an expectation that this was coming, but either way, it had to be incredibly hard. And major credit to Frank Cignetti Jr. for, coming to work. Because I think a lot of people would have had a really difficult time with it. Brian Wintermeyer says it's hard to call plays when your offensive line is getting completely run over. Yeah, that didn't help. It makes it tough to call plays. It makes it tough to... I think it makes it tough to execute what you want to do, particularly if you're trying to run the ball. It's tough if your offensive line can't do it. And then if they're not protecting well, then your quarterback is in trouble, as we saw with Keaton Slovis and Nick Patty both today. Will says, Izzy is way too inconsistent in my opinion. He shows flashes, but he strikes me as a track athlete learning how to play football, and Rodney Hammond is just a football player. Look, I mean, I've been talking up Izzy Abanikanda all offseason. You guys know that if you listen to this show. You've heard me talk about Izzy Abanikanda nonstop all offseason. But, I mean, I can't deny that in that first game and for most of his career, Rodney Hammond just seems to make things happen. You know what I mean? When Rodney Hammond gets the ball, good things happen. And it doesn't look any different than what's happening when Izzy Abanikanda runs the ball, but it, as far as the plays or the blocking or anything like that, it just seems like things happen. Now, Abanikanda had a big day today. He had a really good day. Some of that was that big 76-yard run, but guess what? Those yards count, and that's part of what makes a great running back is the ability to make a big play like that. My guess is Hammond's going to be out for a while, and I think Abanikanda has more games like this in him. I think he can make those plays and be that kind of player. We'll see what he does. Spartan Mag, our buddy Spartan Mag, I think it's I assume that's Jim, says, dang, I was rooting for Pitt today. Hang tough, Pitt, from a boyhood Marino fan growing up in Michigan, now publishing the Michigan State Rival site. I think that's our friend Jim, so nice to see you. Not Jim Hammett. Jim, I'm assuming that's Jim Comp out there with the Michigan State site. We appreciate you checking in. The The Real Deal says on the out of bounds, back inbounds touchdown catch, the receiver initiated the contact and pushed himself out of bounds, should have been overturned. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I thought looking at the replay, because they reviewed the play on the touchdown catch, clearly he goes out of bounds. There's no question about that. The ref throws his hat, which is what they do when somebody goes out of bounds. And the question is whether or not he was forced out. And they obviously, the play stood because they said he was forced out, but I mean, it doesn't look like Rashad Battle really pushes him out. Like the Real Deal says, the receiver seems to initiate the contact and ends up going out of bounds and coming back in and making the touchdown catch. That's a tough call. I didn't think they got that one right because, like we said, it looked like the receiver initiated the contact. Josh Newark says, just got home. Most frustrating thing is not having that belief that this could be a magical year. Had we won and then gone into the end of October undefeated, it would have been great. Need to rebound and win the ACC. Yeah, Brian Wintermeyer actually follows up with what I was going to say. He says, why can't it be a magical year? We lost to Western Michigan and everyone wanted to fire Pat Narduzzi. All the goals are ahead of us. Look, I mean, when we talked in the preseason, I predicted 10-2 as a record for this team. One of the two losses was this game right here. It sort of went according to plan or according to projection or according to a prediction. I thought this might be one of the games they would lose because Tennessee's a good team. And, I thought if they have a game where they make mistakes or don't capitalize on opportunities or they have a key injury like to the quarterback, then they could end up losing. Well, look, those things happened and that was the outcome. That was the result. So, the season's not over. The season's not lost. However you want to define a magical year. If it's playoffs or bust, then yeah, maybe that is likely gone. I mean, depending on what happens the rest of the season. Certainly, if they get to 2 losses, it's out. But I think there's a lot still on the table. Winning 9 or 10 games is a good year, a really good year. Potentially, if you can win the Coastal again and get back to the ACC championship game, that's a really good year. There's a lot out there for this team to accomplish. A lot out there for this team to accomplish. All right, we're past that hour mark, and I think that's always a good time to kind of hang it up. It's after 11:30 anyway. Not nearly as late as it was after the West Virginia game when we went live at 2 a.m. But I appreciate everybody who came into the live stream tonight. Listen, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You can see up in the corner, we got all those headlines. That's what's on on the front page right now. We've got lots of content coming and coverage from this game, this Pitt Tennessee game. So make sure you go check that out and subscribe and get on the message boards and talk with other Pitt fans about this one, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video, that helps us. And then stay tuned. Monday morning, we'll have another Morning Pitt. We do that every morning, Monday through Friday. Release a video just kind of breaking down the latest in Pitt news, whatever's going on in Pitt sports. We bring that to you and break it down with news and insight and analysis and thoughts and all those things. But you'll definitely see all those videos if you subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for watching this video, listen to the podcast, however you consume this. Thanks everybody who joined in the live chat tonight, the live stream. We had a good time as always. We appreciate it. We'll do this again live after the Western Michigan game next Saturday night. That's going to be a late one. But in between now and then, we'll be live on Wednesday night for our regular weekly Panther-Lair show at 8:30 p.m. So you can tune in for that. And like I say, Monday through Friday, every morning, we release the Morning Pit with thoughts and it's like a little morning talk show, basically, or a morning news update, I guess, is one way to put it. So we'll be talking about this game for sure and looking ahead to Western Michigan. So thanks again for checking it out. We appreciate it. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will talk to you, I guess we'll have the Morning Pit on Monday morning right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.